AI has changed which human has to do the work. Now the person who's doing the work is barely looking at it because AI does it, and the person reviewing that second set of eyes is actually doing the thinking and becoming the primary set of eyes, which is completely changing the dynamic. Am I losing my mind here?
This is a good one. I've worked in marketing now for over 15 years. I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, and I'm a numbers guy, focused on systems and processes and data to lead decisions. Can you believe I wasn't the model or spokesperson? And looking at the videos, can you believe I wasn't the video editor or graphics designer? I was the guy behind the scenes. Some content, but a lot of data, a lot of operations, a lot of systems. Marketers will tell you everybody knows how to do their job. Do they really? No, but they think they do. So for many years, it has been part of my job to serve proof of success and oftentimes proof of failure and where it went wrong, provide the insights based on the data. The problem is whether it has been in large corporate environments or small startup environments, people often feel that feelings trump facts. So I would spend hours, days putting a report together with data, going back over the data, making sure all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted to deliver the final report, and with that, the insights. This didn't work, and we believe it is because X, Y, or Z. This did work. Here's what was done differently, and it impacted these trajectories and velocities. And with that data, I had maybe gone through 4 to 12 spreadsheets, reports from 4, 5, 6 different systems. I'd poured over it, double checked it, triple checked it, and inevitably somebody would say, well, I think that's wrong. I don't think that the numbers are accurate. So I started changing the way my reports were done. Here's your bullet points, here's your takeaways, here's your insights. Skip down a bunch of lines, put a few lines of asterisks like, abandon all hope, ye who enter below this line. This is where the data lies. And I would put that data in there. Because before I did that, it was go back and run the numbers again. What a lot of managers and executives were getting at was bring me a different story. They wanted the data to support their story. They didn't want to tell a story with the data that existed. This is why many years ago, taking on contracts, taking on new jobs, I made it very clear up front. I am here for the data. I support the data. We will make sure your data is clean. We will make sure it is accurate, but we will not fudge the data. We will not skew the numbers so that it fits a narrative that really the data doesn't support. By changing it to where it was, here's the findings. If you really want, you can dig into the supporting material. I avoided almost every argument, almost every dispute. Now, truth be told, it did not always save the contract. It did not always save my job. Yes, you can get fired for doing your job. When your job is to provide the data and provide insights from the data, and you do, and you're not willing to go back and change those numbers and falsify the data, you can absolutely find yourself out of work, off a contract, off a project. Now, with the assistance and intervention of AI, my job hasn't changed. It's gotten better in some ways because the same reports I ran before, I can run faster. I can catch other things that I might not have caught. If I spend 4 days working on a report to go over all the data for an entire quarter, I might only catch the big things. But when I can put that through an LLM and have it help analyze the data, it can find things maybe I missed, which may impact what I was seeing. Now, for those who are just getting started with this, I strongly recommend to have in your instructions included, do not guesstimate, do not assume, just bring me the data. More or less, that's what it says. Because without those guardrails, the AI tools will try and provide an explanation for outliers, and they don't know the nuances. There's no way you could have programmed in all of the nuances. Case in point, I just finished a report today that less than a year ago would have taken me about 4 days. It took under 6 hours, and it was pulling in data from a lot of different sources that I was blocked from connecting to, so I had to manually export, import, and do everything. If I could have had connectors and MCPs connected, it would have taken much less time. But while doing that, I was able to gather all the data that I already knew was there. I was able to assimilate it quickly. I was able to go over it, and I was able to go over more than I normally would. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is that I had a thinking partner to prioritize what can be done, what can't, you know, low hanging fruit, high priority. I also had a tool there where I could say, you know what, you go make that change, and I'm going to go over here and work on this other thing. So, three or four things I could hand off to AI while I went and did other work. So, now the report's getting done faster, the changes are getting made faster. And yes, I absolutely know that people are out there putting reports together, not reviewing the data, not challenging the data, not digging deep enough. They're just putting the report together because that's where their job ends and handing it off. And instead of handing off a 1 or 2 page document with bullet points, they're handing off a 30-page report that may or may not have screenshots, and it's someone else's job to now dig through there. What's even worse is now there's a disconnect when they do that because that person who pulled the report knows where the data came from, knows how to access it, knows how to check it, whereas the person they're handing that report to can't. They don't know where it is. They may not have access to those systems. They may not even have a login. So now you've handed off data that hasn't been checked, hasn't been verified, hasn't been challenged, hasn't been analyzed. And someone else who doesn't know your job, doesn't have your access, is going to make the determination. And at that point in time, if all you're doing is pulling data and passing it off to someone else, that's the job that's going to be written off with AI because they could go back in, they could look at your prompts, they could look at your skills, and they could do that themselves. The benefit you add is those years of experience, training, knowledge that are going to enable you to steer the data, collect it in a meaningful way, analyze it, challenge it, and provide the best possible report for the people it needs to go to. They don't need to see everything. You can have that there, and I do recommend it as supporting data because it stops the, well, I think you're wrong. I think this should say something else. Hey, there you go. The data's right there. You are welcome to take another stab at it. But if you're able to provide that executive summary first, that top level, here's our findings, here's what we're going to do, and then here's the supporting documentation, that's the way to go.